What's up, mi raza? Nosotros la Plebada NYC, and tonight, we have a very special guest, and I want to say very, very special guest because he's been around for a long time, humble, always keeps working, always playing good music, always innovating, siempre tocando lo mejor. Con nosotros hoy desde los estudios en New Jersey, we have a good friend of mine, DJ Casanova.
Hey, saludos, corillo, todo el mundo activo.
So let's cook. Let's start cooking because, like you said, we're here to talk. Let's start cooking, Casanova. People want to know de dónde viene el sonido, de dónde viene DJ Casanova.
Bueno, yo vengo de una mezcla de diferentes géneros. Yo comencé DJeando con música hip hop, pero cuando yo era joven, ¿verdad? El hablar español no era cool, ¿verdad? En la escuela, si tú hablabas español, le was like, oh, bilingüe, y se burlaban de ti. So, yo soy de la generación que no hablaba mucho español growing up, y la música también, la salsa era para los viejos, right?
Sí,
like it
sí.
wasn't cool. But when you turn 18, 19, and you start going to parties, and now you want to dance with the girls, and now all of a sudden you like the Spanish music. Y así fue que empecé con... Entonces reggaetón, obviamente como era más familiar a lo que es el dancehall, reggae y el hip hop, para mí fue mucho más fácil meterme en ese espacio porque tenía más ese conocimiento que hasta la música tropical. La música tropical yo la vine a adoptar más adelante, pero de ahí viene
el concepto.
El concepto y el énfasis en el reggaetón.
When did you decide, like, I want to be a DJ? Because some people think that being a DJ is just, putting your music on your computer, but it's much more than that. Sometimes when you're a DJ, tú eres el alma de la fiesta. Mm-hmm. You are, energy that you bring to the party, that's what you pass to the people. So you're more than just DJing. You're like, giving life to people so people can enjoy the night. They go home. Más que nada, they tell stories from the like, right. Oh, that night I did this, I came from this, he was playing this music. What made you, to start, para que la gente dijera, like, it's time for DJ Casanova. I want to DJ. I want to make my name here in New York City.
Yeah, I mean, the whole DJing, since I was a young kid, I liked the whole thing. I would go to like parties and see the DJs with the 1,200 turntables, and I'm like, I want one of those and they were so expensive when I was young. And so like, I've always liked it, right? But when I started to DJ, it was more of like me in the bedroom. And then when I started doing clubs, when I started doing, that's when you realize that you're not playing for yourself, you're not playing for your friends, you're playing for an audience.
Exactly.
And the trick is for all the new DJs, because one of the things that I've been doing lately is sharing a lot of knowledge with the younger guys, is you cannot do this the whole night and be on you have to look and see the reaction of people. And once you learn your music, once you figure out what the songs are, you'll have common denominator records. Like you look at the crowd and you played a song and you see the reaction. There's no reaction. I'm going to switch it. They're not ready for that.
They're not.
Right? But if you play a song and everybody's like, oh, you got to have 2 or 3 songs that will go good with that record.
Exactly.
So you could keep the momentum going. Now, the other part of that is like, you could keep the momentum going, but you have to also think of it as a roller coaster, right? You're building them up and everybody hands up. Now you got to bring them down, like EDM music, how it has the buildups, and then because you'll wear people out.
Yeah.
An hour later, you could be rocking, everybody's sitting down. Why are they sitting down? They're tired. You exhausted them. So you have to also know how to come down, slow it down, and then build it back up. A lot of the new DJs, they want to be up here all the time, right? And you hear them, everybody, let's go! Ah! And okay, it's cool, but then 10 minutes later, whatever, they're tired. They're not even going to react to you or respond because you already wore them out.
You got to keep them like a rhythm, a pace.
Exactly.
Where they're like, they're enjoying it. They're not tired, but they want more. You got to keep their pace. So, like, when you started DJing, I'm pretty sure, because back in the times, at those times, hooky parties was popping. It was like the #1 trend. You know, that's what everybody was doing, hooky parties. So I'm pretty sure you was like dándole ahí en los hooky parties. Like you was DJing a lot in those, right?
Oh yeah, and the thing about those days is that getting the equipment was actually the hardest part. And the music too, because the music was expensive. There was no MP3 downloads, and you had to go physically buy a record. And the records at that time were anywhere from $3 to $5, and if you got an album, it was 10. But you know, singles, and a lot of times if you were in the hip hop world, you had to buy 2 copies of the same record. You know, so you could like go back to back, or you know, do mashups or whatever on the fly. So it was expensive for you to be a DJ back then. The equipment was not readily available like it is now, where anybody could just get a $200-300 controller with a laptop and boom, you know, you could buy, you know, a speaker for a very affordable price.
That's true.
Like a Behringer, you know, at least to get started. Back then it was a lot more complex.
It was Tower Records and 42nd.
Yeah, I mean, for DJs, it was Rock and Soul, because they used to sell the white, you know, label stuff, which is like basically bootleg. Like, and a lot of times, like if you wanted to get an acapella for something, the label wouldn't put it out, but some producer, I don't know, somewhere would get it out and then put it on a record that was white. It had no name. You had to know. You had to be in the know.
It was harder to be a DJ before than it is now. So you think that a lot of DJs that DJ in this era, do you think that they do it because they like what they do and they do it because they love the music? Or you think they do it just because they see it as I could get a pretty penny out of it?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's people who obviously love it, and for you to be successful, you have to be passionate enough, because there's a lot of doing it for free at the beginning. And there's a lot of time and effort so if you don't love it, or if you're in it for the money, you're going to give up in a year, because it's not sexy the first year. Nobody knows who you are. There's 20 other people who could do what you do.
Exactly.
But if you're passionate and you really love it and you're willing to put in the work, then yeah. But you know, it's just like everything. DJing became the new rock star, right? Yeah. Back in the days when I was growing up, kids wanted to be a guitar. That's why they call it Guitar Hero, right? Because back in those days, the guitar was really the main guy, or, you know, so the kids all sign up, go to Guitar Center to get guitar lessons because they wanted to be the guy in the rock band.
Exactly.
Now it's the DJ. Now you got these DJs being glorified. You got celebrities that are, you know, so it became the new thing. And you could see it in marketing. Like the other day, I saw like this box of Coca-Cola, and it had 2 turntables.
Okay.
10 years ago, that would have been a guitar, right? That would have been. So the DJ culture kind of is mainstream now. And so it's going to attract a lot of people, but that doesn't like faze me, because I know that only the strong will survive, and only the true passionate ones will make it to the top, because, you know, it's not easy to sustain.
Now that you mentioned that, a lot of DJs don't know, but in order for you to like actually evolve your craft and, you know, actually stay irrelevant in the game, you have to be a producer. You cannot just be a DJ. You have to be a producer, because those are the ones that, you know, are actually like, you know, producing their own music, choosing their own beats. I think that's when you get into like the end game at the top of being a DJ, when you become a producer.
Well, if you notice all the big guys, David Guetta, Tiesto, they're producers in a way. And some people say, oh, they're using ghost producers. But even at that, you still have to tell the ghost producer what you want. You have to be in the know. And a lot of times is knowing what's trending, knowing what music works is half the battle, right? Anybody could be a musician and make a beat, but it may not hit with the crowd. You as a DJ that's in the know, you know what records hit hard. When you go in the studio, even if you're working with somebody else, you guide them to the sound that you want, or what, you know what's hot. And so it's like sometimes, you know, like people get all bent out of shape. Oh, but he's using like, you know, like with Puff Daddy. Oh, but he's not really making those beats. Khaled's not really making those beats. And they're laughing all the way to the bank, right? So it's like, you guys got to put this purist thing away, because keeping it real, like I come from the era of hip hop that was about keeping it real, right? Where if artists made a pop record or a record that they would call a crossover record, it was seen as bad. Like you know, in hip hop, it was about the struggle. It was about you keeping it real, repping. And so anybody that made commercial music back then, they were like, he's a sellout, he crossed over. And I'm here to tell you that that era is gone. Now it's about appealing to a broad audience. It doesn't have to be, everybody, because you're never going to appeal to everybody, but you have to have a broad audience if you want to get paid the big bucks. Because at the end of the day, as a DJ, there's different levels, right? And so people ask, how can I get this amount of money? You got to draw that amount of people. So if you charge 10 grand, you got to bring in at the door at least 15,000 so the clubs could say, I'm going to keep bringing this guy. Look, he's bringing me people. But if you charge a club $10,000 and only, you made 2,000, I don't care how hot you are on Instagram or TikTok, I'm not booking you again. Yeah. So if you want to be successful as a DJ, part of it is you have to know your craft well, right? You have to be able to do a good job as a DJ, because gimmicks only work for a little bit. Eventually, people will see you and they'll be like, he sucks. And then that's it for you. And then you'll have a nice little run, right? You'll keep going to place and place and place. Eventually, people will realize that you're not that great, that you just got big because of you're a gimmick, and then your career is over. So you got to learn your craft. You got to make sure that you put in work, that you know your music, you know how to use the equipment very well. And if you want to be a traveling DJ, on top of that, you got to learn every piece of gear, because you could run into a club that may have a whole different setup, and you got to be ready for it. And then the other thing is that a lot of people want to be a jack of all trades and then a master of none. You also have to figure out what are you going to specialize in, right? Because right now the word open format gets thrown a lot, right? Oh, open format. And because everybody has access to all this music, everybody thinks that if open format is okay. Well, in open format, you're never going to be a David Guetta or a Tiesto.
Of course not,
right?
Of course not.
Those guys are up there because they're specialists in that EDM music.
Exactly.
DJ Khaled is a specialist in urban music, right? And, and in reggaeton, you got Luyan, right? That specializes in reggaeton. You're not going to have Luyan go and do a African-American party, right? He won't know what to play, but he gets paid big bucks because he's a specialist in the reggaeton scene. So my thing when I was coming up, I applied that and I said, I'm going to focus on reggaeton, right? That's going to be my thing. And I dove into it. I produced it. I knew the artists. I was there with the producers. I was there when the music was actually being made. And so that's why, like right now, I still have that pedigree of the reggaeton. Now, at the time, if I would have said, well, I'm going to do salsa, I'm going to do merengue, I probably wouldn't have that reggaeton background. I'm not saying that as a DJ, you're not going to progress and learn other genres or whatever. But if you really want to be a David Guetta or any of these big DJs, you have to specialize in something. And sometimes it's not just about one specific genre, but you go after one specific audience. Like DJ Adonis, he's like the #1 DJ with Dominicans because he specializes for that community. He knows how to super serve them. Can he rock another Latino American party? Of course. Yeah. But his core audience is going to be the Dominican audience. That's where he specializes in. So you could do multiple genres, and it could be the same thing with a Mexican DJ, right? Like if he does like the cumbias, sonideras, and he does all that stuff, and that's what he specializes in, he could still be really big for that community. If he goes to Puerto Rico, I don't know if it's going to translate because a lot of the people don't know a lot of that music. But in the Mexican community, he's going to be huge. And you hear this with DJs like such and such. He's killing it right now. But when you look, he's killing it to that audience. You know?
So what, if you per se, you as a DJ, what would you advise like DJs if they want to get out of their comfort zone, which is just that one audience, and try to expand to another audience, even if they fail? Because, it's a different type of crowd, it's a different type of music, it's not the same thing. It's still the same craft, but it's different type of music. What advice would you give them if they wanted to try it, like in order for them not to fail or to at least, try to give it a good shot.
Yeah, if you want to be an open format DJ, which is not a problem, and it's a very like fashionable trend right now, it's you have to know what the hits are of all the genres that you play. So if I say, give me some merengue, I'm gonna say Suavemente, I'm gonna say La Dueña del Swing de los Rosario, I'm gonna say El Culiquitaca, right?
Yeah.
Those are like
Typical.
the big hits that you know that.
People
Now
dance.
the same thing with when I play Mexican music, I play La Quebradita de La Chona, I'll play El Sonidito. Those are like huge records. You as an open format DJ, you don't have to get really deep into the latest, greatest song that just came out. Sometimes when you do that, you actually fail because you got to understand the public doesn't know that record yet. And sometimes as an open format DJ, the more of a common denominator song you use will help you because more people in that party will know that one song, right? Like if you're in a party, like I've been in parties and there's a bunch of African Americans but there's some Latinos and I'll play Suavemente, even the African Americans will dance. But if I play the brand new merengue record that nobody knows,
They won't move.
they're not gonna, maybe the Latinos will dance, but then I'll lose the rest of the room. And that's the important thing about open format DJs. You got to figure out what the big records are that have mass appeal and are also common denominators amongst different, not just different ethnicities, but also different age groups.
Correct.
Because if you're doing a party and there's 21-year-olds all the way to 50-year-olds, there's different eras in there, right?
Yeah.
And so the 21-year-olds, they may not know the music that the 50-year-old knows from the 80s and 90s. And so you have to be careful. If you go too deep in the 90s or in the 80s, you're going to lose the younger audience.
Wow.
So, but if you play the standards, what they call the standards, like Vendevórame Otra Vez de Lalo, everybody knows that record, right? The older people are going to know and the younger people are going to know it. And so that's important for you to know that.
And when we already had that one stage where you started to DJ, you was getting known. When you received like the first time that they told you, Casanova, we want you to come to the radio, or we want you to start playing in la radio. How did you feel about that? Like, I'm pretty sure you was like, finally my work is being recognized. I've been here for years and now I'm here. How that feeling the first time you found out that you was going to be in the radio?
Well, let's go back in time to that era where as a DJ, there was no social media, right?
Exactly, no social media.
And the DJ wasn't seen as an artist yet, right? It was just like the guy that will play the records for the rappers or the guy that will play music at a party, right? There wasn't anything special about it. The guys who would play for the artists on stage, like, Jam Master Jay and those guys, they got recognition because everybody saw them on the videos that were on stage. But your average DJ, in order for you to get to the next level, radio was like a big push, right?
A big one, yeah.
And so when I wanted to grow, obviously, I wanted to get into radio. And when I finally got into radio, at that time, radio was so huge that, you would like play and then let's grab some calls and then you get the instant feedback from the people. Yo, Casanova, we're listening to you here. Send me a shout out. Shout to my girl, blah, 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 blah. And that would give you an instant high, like, oh my God, I love this. And you catch what we call the radio bug, right? Because you're getting that instant feedback that people are listening to me everywhere. And so radio was one of those things that fascinated me for a long time. And then obviously after the radio, if you wanted to keep growing, then that's where the DJ producer came in, the remixers, right? And this is more like along the era of the beat makers in hip hop and also the EDM DJ producers that were DJs but also making their own music. And those guys got really big. And so as a DJ, you're like, I got to start making music. And I bought my first 12, the SP1200, the Akai, the MPC 2000, and those were the things that you would start to play around and make beats in, because as a DJ, that's really was what made you big back then.
And you used to like after when you started DJing. How long did it take you to you wanted to like start making your own beats, your own music, like started messing around, because I'm pretty sure when you start as a DJ, like personally, you see the whole thing in front of you and you see a whole bunch of buttons and you're like, oh my God, you don't know what you're doing. You're just
Yeah.
learning. But that's the beautiful part that you're learning with your new toy, you're moving it
Yeah.
around at the beginning. It's like a bicycle, you fall and fall. But then you eventually you get it. You start being master at your craft. You start, doing it better than yesterday, and it starts to get better. It comes to a point where you're not doing it like for fun. You're not doing it because it's a job. You're doing it because you like it. You start to feel like the music
Yeah.
inside you, and it starts to feel good. You start to pass that energy to the people. That people start being, oh, like I'm pretty sure when you used to go to the club, Casanova, because it was mad people around you. I remember that, bro. Like as soon as you got off, you got off the DJ set, there was mad people already waiting. Oh, una foto, una foto.
Yeah.
Like, let me take a photo. It was photos everywhere because I was there. I saw it personally. So I'm like, yo, Kaz. I'm pretty sure the first time you was like really excited, right? But also I'm pretty sure that sometimes you were like, like you wanted to just like leave because it's like everybody. Sometimes you need your space as well, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not always about everybody se te quiere juntar and todo. It's nice. It feels good to be loved because that's the best feeling in the world as a human being that other people love you without even knowing you at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're showing you that love. But sometimes I feel like you también you be like, oh, I need a little bit of space. I'm Casanova, pero también un espacio porque uno lo necesita a veces.
Yeah.
It's like they don't sometimes. As a like you said back then, we was known as DJs, but now DJs are known more like artists.
Yeah.
So sometimes they don't know what
Yeah,
you're
we
going
were
through.
at the breaking ground of that, right?
Exactly.
And like one of the things that I always say is like you have to stop, and if somebody wants to take a picture with you or talk to you, you have to stop and talk to them because these are the people that are going to be your cheerleaders, right? They're going to tell people about you. If you think you're too good for them, that's the beginning of your decline,
Yes.
right? Because in order for you to draw people, you have to have a public. You have to have people that back you up, that are cheering for you. And so some artists and some DJs, I suppose now, forget that. They forget that the people are the ones responsible for you earning a living. Because you could be a great DJ. There's guys that in their bedroom are like, chicka, and you see them on TikTok, chicka, 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 but they don't connect with an audience. People don't see them for anything other than the scratching. And so there's nothing there. And sometimes, I explain to DJs that music itself is more important than the tricks, right? You could go chicka, 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 but if you play somebody's favorite song, that hits them harder than the tricks because when you do that, you're playing for other DJs. You're not necessarily playing for the public. And I'm not saying that you can't scratch use it as a fill-in or as your style to mix in.
Or like a transition.
Exactly. But when all you focus on is that, and then and it's cool if that's like your hobby, that's your thing. You want to go do the Red Bull battle. But if you ask me, how come you're not getting any bookings? How come clubs are not booking you? Part of it is that you need to connect with the audience. And the way you do that is with music, figuring out what your people like as music and playing that. Now, as far as the equipment, when I first started, I would see a console and it looked daunting. Like, what is this? All these buttons. But once I cracked the code, it was like, oh, that's not so hard. Basically, I don't know if you could see it in camera, but a console is basically the same thing 24 times.
Yeah, more channels.
Or 30, whatever the channel is. But it's all one fader, which is the volume. You have your pan, which you can send it to the left or right. You have your EQ, which is your bass, your mid, your high, and your gain on top. I mean, pretty much, but you have like 1,000 of them, right? So everybody's like, what do all these buttons do? But once you figure out one, you're like, oh, this is not so bad. But learning the equipment is important, right? Like knowing you have to know your craft. These are your tools. Like if you're a carpenter, you got to know how to use a hammer, right? You got to know how to use all your, and it's the same thing with the equipment. You got to know what these things do, not just put 2 records on beat and think that that's enough, right? You got to know what the EQ does. Why is it there?
Exactly.
And how can I use it to better my craft? Ask those questions.
Now I think, because I did like a little encuesta and asking people before, like, and people want to hear, like, how did Casanova get involved in the reggaeton world? Because the reggaeton world was crazy, dumb big back then. It's still big now.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I'm talking about back then. It was like everybody wanted to be a reggaeton artist. That's what everybody wanted to be.
yeah.
Like everybody wanted to have the chain, the big bill, the jacket, because reggaeton was more. It was not just like music. It's like a culture. It was more like a culture for everybody, not just for one, not for one.
It
The
was
one
a
type.
lifestyle.
Yeah,
It was a
exactly. Everywhere. It
lifestyle.
was a lifestyle that people se definían their life through the music that every reggaeton artist used to sing. They're like, oh, it wasn't about the lyrics, but it was about, oh, he's going through what I'm going through, and that's dope. And the beat it was something new. It was something new that hadn't existed, and somebody brought it to life, but it wasn't that popping in New York City until empezó como like the 98, and it started like hitting hard, like
Yeah.
hard. So how did because you was there, you was a pioneer when it came to reggaeton. So people want to know how reggaeton was then than it is now.
It was very difficult back then, to be honest with you. I remember in New York, people would tell me, "You're wasting your time. That's only a Puerto Rico thing. That'll never work in New York." And like, I saw it. And sometimes, like visionaries see things that regular people don't see, right? And when I got involved, the community was small, right? And so I started reaching out to the artists. I started doing parties with them. I had a radio show, the first reggaeton radio show in the US. And like I started interviewing these guys. I will call them, and they'll be like, we're coming out with a record. And these guys were super excited to call a radio station because you got to remember in Puerto Rico, people were anti-reggaeton. Like the police had a crackdown. They had this thing where like if you were playing what they call underground at the time, they'll pull you over, take your cassette or whatever, or your CD, whatever you were playing. So it wasn't sexy. It wasn't mainstream. It was considered street music.
Yes.
But to me, like I said, coming from hip hop and reggae, that was really big back in the days, this was a natural progression. And so in New York, it was difficult because like you were the underdog. You were playing this music that's unfamiliar to people. But we used to have a community of people that would be so loyal. Every week, they will call the radio station. Like I remember, I used to do the show with my brother, DJ Cream, and like he would be on the phone with people. He's like, "Yeah, I just got a call. This person's listening, and blah blah blah." And so we would send them shout outs, and the community kept growing. And it got to a point where our show and the music started getting better, right? There was an evolution in the sound of reggaeton. I would accredit this to the era of DJ Blas and Looney Tunes.
Okay.
DJ Blas kind of gave you that discoteca vibe with the hard drums or whatever. And then Looney Tunes refined it. Yes. They made it more like an actual record, and used different sounds that... Because before that, there was a lot of sampling of the Jamaican records. There wasn't original beats, and if they were still rough around the edges. They kind of made it commercial. And then when Don Omar came out with Dile, now you have people that were tropical people that didn't like reggaeton. They're like, I don't like reggaeton, but I like that song, right? And then Tego was a phenomenon. A lot of people that also would say, I don't like reggaeton, I only like Tego. Tego was like the exception. Like they saw him in a different light. And so with me, one of the things that I explain to people is that sometimes, when people tell you like, that's never gonna work or whatever, you have to go with your gut. You have to go with what you believe, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, because nobody knows what you're into. Nobody knows what you see beyond what they see. And there's also a thing that happens in every genre of music where you have early adopters, right? And these early adopters tend to be a little younger because people that are older, and we could talk about the way people consume music, right? Usually the rule of thumb is somebody who's 15 to 25, that's their golden era of music. When those people turn 40, they're going to say, oh, the music from back in my days, that was the good music, right? And they're talking about that era between 15 and 25 years old, because that's music discovery. They fell in love for the first time. They have a song that they identify with. First time going out to the clubs and hearing these songs. And so that music stays with them. They carry that forever. And then, you know, you'll get new songs as you go along, but that's going to be your golden era. And you see this now, like whenever you see a freestyle party and you see these people that are like 40 to 50 years old, that was their 15 to 25-year-old music. And that's why they go to these shows, because they're so connected, because these songs haven't been on the radio for 30 years, right? But they still carry that because they were, and to me, the reggaeton was that too. We were appealing to a very young audience. By the way, when we launched La Calle, which we'll get to later on, which was the first all reggaeton radio station in New York City, we were number one, 12 to 24-year-olds. So what I'm saying actually was proven, documented, that that's what happens with music. So we were appealing to a very young audience, but I knew that over time, this was going to keep growing.
Exactly.
And I didn't let the objections of the people, like, you know, hold me back, because I knew what I wanted. But what I did that was important was I spread the music, right? I would do like compilations, and I would send it out to different DJs. Because, you know, as a DJ, if you have a genre and you want that genre to grow and you're the only one with access, I'm telling you right now, that genre is going to die faster than you know it. You can't be at all places at all time, and you need a community, you need allies. And so in order for you to grow a genre, you have to spread it out. You have to educate not just the public, but your other DJs. I would tell guys, yo, right now, this is the hottest reggaeton record. You got to play this. And, you know, like during that time, one of the things that I discovered was that reggaeton was actually, just like me, just in my case, was appealing more with kids that were more Americanized, that were like less Spanish dominant than the real Spanish dominant kids, right? In the United States. So we started to take hip hop records and doing reggaeton remixes, R&B records and doing remixes. And those spread out like wildfire. And I actually did one for Def Jam with an artist named Christina Milian.
Okay.
And with that relationship that I had with Sam Crespo, that was the head guy there at Def Jam at that time, he's like, yo, everybody loves the remix. Everybody's playing it. They're asking me for more. What can we do? And I said, well, I have this, you know, like, it's like a Reggaeton 101 CD. He's like, give it to me. So he copied it in the Def Jam office, and he sent it to all the A-list DJs in the United States. These are all the guys playing in all these hip-hop radio stations across the country. And that really helped a lot spread the genre. And eventually it helped me too, because when I launched my syndicated show Subalo, which was the first nationally syndicated reggaeton show in the US, it got on in hip hop stations first before in Latin stations. So the show actually launched a radio station in LA called Power 106.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's the number one, well, it was at that time number one hip hop station in LA. And I met these cool people named Kool-Aid and E-Dub, and they used to have a show called Pocos Pero Locos.
Pocos Pero Locos.
And they had kind of the same, you know, situation as me. They used to do the Chicano rap. And the Chicano rap was huge with the, you know, Mexican Americans, mostly obviously in the West Coast and Texas, but it was a community, and they were fiending for that, for their music, for their culture
Chicano
to be
rap
represented. And so they had a show called Pocos Pero Loco that was nationally syndicated, and it was doing very well in a lot of markets. Like on Sundays, that show was like, everybody would listen to it.
This was what, like in the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Around there, right?
Exactly. And so I met with them at a conference, and I'm telling them, you know, right now I have the show in New York, and then I drive to Connecticut. I do the show in Hot 93.7 in Connecticut, which is another hip hop radio station that was letting us do the reggaeton. And then from there, we drive to Boston to a station called Jammin' 94.5, which was the hip hop station in Boston. And I would do the show up there, my boy Roy Barbosa. And then I would drive back to New York, got home like at 6 in the morning. But I'm telling them, like, I'm doing all this. They're like, you're crazy. Why don't you just send it out to, in syndication? And I said, I tried. I talked to Premiere. I talked to all these syndication companies. I don't know what reggaeton is. They don't know what the hell to do with it.
It was working.
Yeah. And they're like, well, let's team up. Maybe we could, pitch the show for you. We already have a bunch of stations that. So I put together the pilot, and they started sending it out to all these PDs and these radio stations across the country. And obviously most of them were hip hop stations, and they loved it because to them, again, it was more similar to their, than if I was doing, let's say, un corrido, you send it to a hip hop station, they're gonna be like, oh, this is, this is gonna alienate some of our audience, but a reggaeton sounds like reggae, right? To an untrained ear, this guy sounds like a reggae artist, because a lot of people don't even know what the reggae artists are saying. It's true.
Look about that song with Dina Sky, Noriega. That was like, it's like an anthem. It's an anthem right now.
And that record, I know some people in Puerto Rico have like laughed about it. They're like, this guy's crazy, because they're only seeing it from the island's perspective. Seeing the island, you're like in the Mecca, right? You're like there, you have access to all these guys, you're hearing the radio. But in the US, I give Nori a lot of credit because it wasn't cool. People have to understand something. It wasn't cool for hip hop artists to embrace their Latino heritage. And some of that has to do with a guy named Geraldo. He used to have a song called Rico, Suave. So he became almost like a Vanilla Ice. The Latino Vanilla Ice is what I call him. And so at the time, a lot of, like, in the hip hop community, like a Latino would do something or say, oh, that's some Rico Suave shit. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, and it took Big Pun. When Big Pun dropped his album, that's when people say, okay, Latinos could rap. Like they have they have what it takes to. But before that, it was always, so a guy like Nori that had respect in the hip hop community, like for him to embrace this sound was a big deal. And so a lot of people in Puerto Rico just don't understand that cultural aspect of it. And the fact that it was on BET, you would see this video and the other thing about that song too, that it got added to hip hop stations across the country.
Yeah, that became big.
Exactly. So all these people are hearing this sound. This is a new sound. And I think it helped in more ways than one. It helped Daddy Yankee a lot, because he ended up getting that deal with Interscope, and I think that La Gasolina was big, but I think that song was really what exposed him to these mainstream record labels.
I remember when that song came out, Summertime, it was everywhere. Tú pasabas en el Bronx, in Harlem, every studio said that song was bombing, like the Nori and Nina. It was like everybody was playing it. La Pompa ahí con el agua, everybody outside, but the music with the boombox, that's when you know something is hot. Yeah, and it keeps going, because la comunidad is what keeps it alive. Up until now, you still see a lot of people, around Washington Heights, right? You still see a lot of like old heads still sitting down, playing domino, listening to like bachata, tomando romo, because it's culture. That's culture that they grew up with, and they don't want to give it up because they feel like that makes them alive inside of them. It makes it like the culture keeps going. And when you keep the culture going, the music never really dies because you're keeping it alive. It doesn't matter how you do it, but as long as you keep it going, the music is never gonna die.
And everything comes around full circle in music. Like, that's something that always happens. People want to say, okay, this sound is dead. I'll give you an example. Disco music, right? Disco will never make a comeback. Obviously, it's not going to come back as its own genre with the same sound, but we had an evolution of disco with Dua Lipa. Those are disco records. She's just modernized them, and a lot of them were very successful. Funk music, right? The African-American funk music, Bruno Mars. All those are funk records recycled, he just made them new. And so music comes around full circle all the time. You can't ignore certain genres because they pass out of fashion, because before you know it, people get tired of something and they come back, and sometimes they just go back to what's familiar to them, and sometimes they go back to what has worked in the past.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the things with music. Like, if you're producing music, have an open mind. don't get stuck into just one sound or something. Go in the past, get inspiration from other people, because you'll find a lot of stuff
Yeah,
there.
yeah, of course. Talk to us a little bit about La Calle.
La Calle, my
Talk to us,
baby.
bro. I'm talking about when we used to do little clubs with like 50, 60 people tops. Everybody mad squish in there. But bro, I'm talking about Mexican parties too.
Yeah.
When they used to put that reggaeton, or you used to come in and put that Rakini KNY, cinco, bro, eso se encendía, el roof would go on fire. It was like, we embrace that. That's what I grew up listening to when I was growing up. I'm Mexican. I like the Mexican music, but reggaeton had a big impact here in New York. Most of those little places, like because it was more like how you could speak easies, right?
Yeah.
It was big. It was big. Every time you used to come in, put in everybody for that 30, 40 minutes, they weren't Mexican. They were Puerto
Yeah.
Ricans,
I mean,
baby.
reggaeton was the first music that kind of bridged cultures
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
believe it or not. And you still see it to
Even
this
African
day.
American people were
Yeah.
dancing.
But right now, you could have a concert in LA, which is mostly like Mexican and Central Americans, and sell it out, and it's reggaeton, right? And it's because of that, because this younger generation wasn't stuck on their taste. Like, I'll give you an example about Caribbeans, right? Like, there was an era where the salsa heads didn't want to hear bachata because they were salsa, right? They were loyal to salsa. But what changed all that was in the 90s, towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s, it's what we call the iPod generation, meaning that everybody got an iPod, a player, and in that player, they had different music. It wasn't just one genre, right?
Yeah, it was a shuffle.
And so this new generation started listening to different genres of music. It wasn't just one. And it was cool now to explore and to listen to different stuff, where before you had to be a purist in every genre. And so around that time is when reggaeton also blew up. So you have all these Mexican kids that reggaeton also felt more familiar to them because they're listening to Power 106, all these hip hop artists, and you got all these reggaetoneros dressed as hip hop artists.
Correct.
They're in high school, they're not speaking Spanish, right? It wasn't cool. I'm telling people right now, Bad Bunny made it cool to speak Spanish,
but it wasn't
cool back then.
It wasn't.
And so you got all these kids, and in LA, I remember I used to go out there with Kool-Aid and E-Dub all the time. And like you would see the divide with the Mexican kids. Half of them looked like reggaetoneros, and then the other half were like what they call fresas. And so it was like you could see it. You're like, he's a reggaeton listener right there. He's like, he's a fresa. He's like listening to maybe Belinda or something. But that's part of how that culture got bridged together, because it was the first music. And it's crazy because like in the 1950s, 60s, all the way to the 70s, in Puerto Rico, el cine mexicano y la música mexicana was huge. Like, as a matter of fact, the most known version of En Mi Viejo San Juan was by a Mexican artist. Like, he sang that song because they were constantly going to Puerto Rico and doing shows in Puerto Rico. You had residencies in Puerto Rico. There was a lot of... But then in the 80s, I would say late 70s, early 80s, the music kind of started to divide. The boom of the salsa and the tropical music, the merengue from the Dominican Republic, and the music kind of like shifted apart. Now I see the music coming around full circle. Now you have more Caribbeans embracing some of these traditional Mexican artists that you had not seen, like Grupo Firme performing in Puerto Rico. Everybody said, they're not gonna sell out in Puerto Rico. Are you crazy? And they sold it out. So it's happening, it's slowly, but I think music now, and I tell you that a lot of that has more to do with social media, because radio has formats, right? Radio is not gonna play things outside of their formats unless it's a novelty record, right? Like I'll give you an example with the Americanos. I used to say every 10 years, the Americanos have a Spanish song, La Macarena, La Bamba, they'll have one song that they'll have like as a party song, and they'll play those songs, but it's that one song in that format, right? And radio, you usually have a format because you have your listeners and you kind of appealing to that. And so in social media or in the digital world, you don't have those restrictions, right? You can have a person that likes Peso Pluma, Bad Bunny, They like Gran Combo, they'll like Monchi Alexandra, they'll like, Vicente, whatever, like you don't have those same restrictions with music. And so in the future, I think it's going to get more interesting. And I think that because of the saturation of music, the really big artists are going to still dominate. They're still going to, because one of the things that happens now in music is that there's like 100,000 records that get released every day. People don't have time to hear 100,000 records. And so that's where you're going to see more filtering of music. And usually the best of the best is going to rise to the, like they say, the cream always rises to the top. Exactly. And so when people ask, how come such and such is not hitting? How come? Well, because a lot of the people may not been into him like this other guy, And I hear that with Bad Bunny a lot. Like, why him? Why? Somehow he figured out, he cracked the code. He figured out what the majority of the people like.
He even sold out in Mexico.
Yeah, that was
Mexico is one of the toughest crowds. If you want to become a singer, you gotta hit in Mexico. Mexico is a tough crowd. It's a tough crowd.
Very, very. I mean, but he somehow he connected with that audience there.
It was his time, I guess.
And he did it promoting an album about Puerto Rico, which is even crazier, right? It's like, and people, what fascinated me about that is how people embraced him with the album. And I think it's because all over Latin America, we have the same problems. Like in Mexico, there's also gentrification happening. There's a bunch of Americanos moving to Mexico City, and not just Americanos, but Europeans too.
Yes.
They figure out Mexico City, because a lot of people here in the U.S. that never been to Mexico, they think that Mexico is like some slum with like no electricity, and people are like going
like montaña.
Mexico, Monterrey, that has none to envy any U.S. city. Mexico, all those are major cities with skyscrapers and everything. But some people here still think, and that's a lot of it has to do with Hollywood and the media and how they perceived it. And so I think in Mexico they're having the same problem where the rents are going up because you have a lot of and so the things that Bad Bunny is talking about, it appeals to some of the people in Mexico as well, and I think they understood where he was coming from.
It was a dope album. I listened to it, so it was pretty good. But I think he changed his style up a little bit.
Yeah, because like he tried to. It's almost like if Peso Pluma came out with an album and did stuff for the people from Oaxaca, from Puebla, like they have their norteños, and so he kind of did the same thing. He took these old roots, which would be the equivalent of a mariachi in Mexico.
If you was to say out of the top of your head, like just 5 of your best tour that you toured in a reggaeton tour, with the first 5 that you opened up for, like which will it be?
Well, I actually got to open for Bad Bunny a few times, believe it or not, before he blew the hell up. But I would say that one of my memorable experience was I was DJing with Don Omar in Cartagena, Colombia, in La Plaza de Toro. And bro, that was like I was doing clubs in New York, I used to do a big club in New York called Club Exit.
Oh yeah, I remember that Club Exit.
So and I thought me and Cream will get on stage and we're like we're
Latin quarters.
Exactly. But when I went to Colombia and there was like 30,000 people there, and it's like a whole different.
You were like the kid blew up, right? You were like, how was that experience when you went from the club to that first time when you saw all those people? How did you feel?
That was like at first I'm like, oh.
You were nervous, right?
A little bit, yeah. Even though you're used to doing it, it's still there's a lot of people there, and these are not people that. That from the club that, or whatever, these are like total strangers from a different country, and you're there and you're rocking out. I also did, I opened up for Tito el Bambino in Costa Rica. Oh, they had this festival over there, and they had like different tents, and it was pretty crazy, Costa Rica, because in one tent, they had Iron Maiden, which is like really underground rock, like heavy. And then in another tent, I'm there with Tito el Bambino. It's like same country, like two different type of vibes. Yeah. Damn. But that one was pretty cool. I mean, I got to travel to a lot of countries in Europe. I've done a lot of shows in Europe. And I was the first reggaeton DJ to do a tour in Japan. I did 3 cities in Japan.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And that was pretty legendary too, because Japan is also another market that is very difficult to enter. And I did a compilation album, with a record label out there in Japan. And I did that 3-city tour, and it was crazy. Like, them reacting to La Gasolina was like I would play La Gasolina, they're like, ah! And these are people that, like Japanese, like, so that was pretty. I mean, I've traveled all over the U.S. I've got to travel a lot of cities in the U.S. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that when you travel all these cities, right, you pick up different things, you learn different languages, or things that they call themselves. And so one of the things that I would do early on, I know like other people are doing it now, but I was like, los boricua, dominicano, cubano, colombiano, ecuatoriano, chapina, catracho, Perú, Argentina, Panamá, Costa Rica, Venezuela, El Salvador, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Brazil, Mexicano.
You were the first one to start doing that. Yeah,
saying everybody, right? Because you would go to places, and then I would have people be like, no mencionaste a Bolivia. And I'm like, oh, damn, so I got to add Bolivia to this thing. And then they would be like, nosotros nos llamamos los catrachos, the Hondureños, somos catrachos. So I'm like, catracho, guanacos for the Salvadorian.
Yeah, that's how he used to start it. No, like, saludos para toda mi gente de Colombia. Yeah, I remember that. Other DJs started doing the same thing after that. Yeah. They started mentioning it.
Especially in New York, you could get away with that because we have everybody here, like, even Bolivians in New York that you don't see nowhere else. But yeah, that's one of the things I started embracing. And one of the communities that also like I have a lot of love and respect is the Mexican community, because they've been super, super fans of mine. They've always embraced me, and I've always embraced them back, right? Like, I think that with Mexicans, what I discover is that if you're genuine about their music and respect for their culture, these are the dopest, most humble people that are gonna die and ride hard for you. Yeah. So I still, to this day, do a lot of Mexican events. I still, when I travel, most of the cities that I do, the majority of the people there are Mexican. And I do very well, with that community. And it's because I learned the music, I learned the culture, I know what I'm gonna say. I know there's different parts of Mexico. Like, I'll give you an example. In New York, the majority of the people are from Puebla.
Yeah, Puebla.
But if
Puebla, York.
Yeah, exactly. You go somewhere else, it could be from, Guadalajara. They could be from
Monterrey.
Guerrero. So it's like you got to find your where they're from. Sometimes I'll say, ¿Dónde están los que le van a la América?
There we go.
Los que le van a la
Casanova was Mexican. Casanova was Mexican, of course. So, you see, but that's what I'm saying. That's what we're talking about. You transcended not only to playing one género, but you knew what other people wanted. Like, you saw it. Like, you said, I went to this place and I saw the Mexican playing this, and I was like, what the hell is that? You adapted that into your head. You're like, this is what I got to do the next time I see them. I'm going to play, I'm going to try. If it works, bien. Y si no, pues,
no, and they get excited. Because it's like, you're not somebody that they expect that to hear that from. And so when you do, they're like, oh, he's repping us. Like, he's doing something for us. Like, he's paying respect to our culture. Like, he's not just a reggaeton guy or whatever. Like, he knows the music.
Yeah, because if you think about it, overall, your life started like this, then it went like that. Then it was just a roller coaster. Like, you got to enjoy, like, a lot of rides. And up to now, I feel like you're still on the ride, but it's just different than before.
Hay que mantenerse. Esa es la parte más difícil que mucha gente no te dicen. No es hacerse, es mantenerse. I used to hear that as a kid, and it's like, I would be like, I wonder what they mean by that, but now I understand, right? Because anybody could go in, get lucky, put out one song, and boom, se dispararon. But now their metric is that song. They got to do either another big song like that or even bigger. Because if they don't, then they fall off, right? And then nobody. So with me, I went through a lot of difficulty, but I think all those difficult moments helped me in the long term, right? Longevity. Why? Because if I wouldn't have done all that work, gone to all those radio stations, spend the time editing music, doing edits, bettering my craft, you know, yeah, I would have my opportunity with La Calle, but then that was it. And then the other thing I would say about that is that, you know, and especially in today's climate that everything's moving so fast, adapt or die. If you have this mindset, this is how I do things. If you don't like it, too bad. Don't book me. If you're that guy, you're not going to last. You have to adapt. There's going to be a new kid with a new trick, and promoters are going to be like, I want that kid, right? And so you're not going to copy him, but you're going to take your style and adapt it to that trend, right?
Correct.
And also that happens with music discovery, right? Like before, people will put on the radio and, okay, these are the songs that are hitting. I'm going to play those songs. But now you got TikTok. There's songs that go viral on TikTok that you need to have them. You need to, and there's old songs. I'll give you an example. I'm in TikTok and all I see is La Vaca. And then people are doing the cow, the same cow. And I said, fuck it, I'm going to play La Vaca to see what happens. I play La Vaca, everybody went fucking crazy. And I'm like, that's fucking TikTok. Because that song has been out for 25 plus years.
La de mi papá tenía un burro.
Yeah. So those are songs that as a DJ, you have to see, okay, everybody's hearing this song right now. Have it ready in your arsenal, even if it's an old song, even if it's different. But don't get locked into a certain way of doing things. Don't get locked in, even with mixing, right? A lot of times there's a lot of old school DJs that you talk to them and they'll tell me, yo, these young DJs now, they trash. They don't even know how to mix. And I'm like, if they're rocking the party, people are loving what they're doing, does it really matter that they put 2 records on beat? As a traditionalist, I'm like, yeah, I appreciate when somebody puts records on beat. And if they put them on key, it makes for a good transition, right? But it doesn't mean that that's the only way for you to be successful, right? There's different ways. At the end of the day, what matters is you identify what it is that you want to do or where you want to be, and you apply it.
You want to know, that's crazy, because that's the same thing that I'll be telling people. I'll be like, you don't have to mix it perfectly, but as long as you have the crowd going and you know what they want, that's all that matters. That's what I'll be telling people. But some people are like, nah, it has to be on beat, because if you don't do it on beat, you're not a DJ, you're doing it the wrong way. But what's wrong with doing it the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, hip-hop started what people will call destroying records, right? Scratching them, going back and back, and it made it a whole genre. So, you know, like, yeah, are you gonna be sloppy and have a mess? No, or a train wreck? That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that find your style, find what makes you unique, and you know, and at the end of the day, what matters the most is how you connect with the public using music. What you do in between, that's up for debate. Some people, like for radio, I could tell you that simple mixes, like when you go from one song to the next without skipping a beat, is the best thing for ratings, because if you're in the car and nothing's distracting you, you're gonna leave the radio station there. But if you're like, people are gonna be like, what the hell's boom, and they tune out. So for radio, there are exceptions. Remember, the radio is a platform, and for that platform, certain rules apply. And yes, there are other DJs that kind of do that, like you hear the hip hop stations, but that's also part of their culture.
All right.
But for the Latinos, older people, if you do too much craziness, they're like, what is this? And they tune out. So the simpler the mixes. Now, the other thing about the connecting with the public is that you can't think that you're going to build an audience only connecting with them when you go to the club once a week. Like, of course not. You have to create content. You have to do mixes, put them up wherever you can to let people know what you do. And, you know, one of the things that back in the days, like I would go into the barbershop and people would be like, "Tú tienes mezcla." You give these people a mezcla, and then obviously you put your drops or whatever on it, they're gonna be fans, right? They're gonna, and whenever you're somewhere, they're gonna go follow you because you have that sound that they like.
And I mean, like you said, back then social media wasn't as big as
No.
it is now. Social media is a big help now to like anything that you do, not just music, anything, even an influence or whatever you want to be. Social media has a lot to do with that now. Because the way you're telling me your whole story, it's like you was like a podcaster, an influencer, and everything at once before everything
Yeah.
existed. You know, you was even like a manager on the road because you was here, you was there, you was everywhere.
Yeah.
So you was doing all of that before everything came out, and that's dope because that's actually, you know, you wanted it. Like, you know what you wanted and you went straight for it. Like, you know, even though, like you said, people say, oh, this might not work, but you were like, okay, whatever, it might not work for you, but it was gonna work for me, and you kept going and you never gave up, and look at you now.
I kept adapting, right? You can't, you know, like sometimes, you know, and I tell this to a lot of guys that are young producers that are starting to make music. They do one song, nobody likes it, and they're like, they quit. They don't want to do it. They hide their productions because they're afraid of what people are gonna say. And a lot of times their productions don't sound as good as the other ones. And I'm like, see, that's where you're making the mistake, right? Yeah, if you're not ready for prime time, don't go to an artist and be like, I make beats. Because they got a million big time producers giving them quality beats. Like,
Exactly.
but take those and figure out what works and what doesn't. Because every time you fail making a beat, you're learning something. You're learning what not to do, how not to EQ. And so you're learning every beat that you make that's wrong. And you also like start to figure out how other producers made a certain thing. And you gotta, you know, there's a thing now called YouTube University. Whatever it is that you want to do, there are videos, there are people out there giving you the knowledge. You just gotta want it. You can't just sit in your couch and be like, I want to be as big as David Guetta and not put in any work. You know, like David Guetta, he's not there because somebody said, I'm gonna make you famous. You know, the Illuminati thing that people think happens, right? And it's like, no, he put in work. This guy invested his money. He got artists. He worked with producers. Like he figured out a way to make it work, to make it big. And so whatever it is that you're going to do, just know that there's going to be a lot of work, especially in the beginning, that you're not going to get paid for. There's going to be an investment of equipment and of things that you have to make on yourself in order for you to grow. But if you don't want to invest any money, like I hear this all the time, but that controller is $1,000. Figure out how to get the money to get that controller. Like, you know, because if you don't have the equipment, you're going to be left behind. You're not going to perform your best. You're not going to do. So having quality equipment is also important. Don't skip out on equipment. Own your own equipment. Don't go to the club to practice. You should be practicing at home, learning your music and organizing your music. One of the things that happens to a lot of DJs is that they have what they call a power set, right? After they do that 30-minute set, they fall apart because they can't find music. They don't know what to do. Have your music organized and learn your music. I would tell DJs when they're starting out, go to the clubs, see what other DJs are playing, and watch the crowd reactions. Don't even look at the DJ. Just see when he plays something, how do they react? Okay, I need to play this song. I need to add this to my arsenal, right? You're doing research. In radio, as a programmer, I could tell you that we also do research. We do music tests. We figure out what songs are common denominator for people. I know that some people have a hard time with that. I'm like, oh, you know, that's radio. It's all the same stuff. And the reason why it's all the same stuff is because we put 100 people in a room, and it could be a Mexican 32-year-old, a 42-year-old Dominican, a 25-year-old Puerto Rican. And we ask all those people, listen to these songs and tell us what you think. At the end, we score them and we know, okay, out of all these people, these are the songs that are common denominator amongst everybody. And that's why in radio you hear these songs, right? It's not like an accident, or it's not that radio just wants to play those songs. Is that those are the songs that work for that format, for that radio station. Now, for a nightclub, it may be a little different, right? Because every club has his niche, has the people, or it could be a night, right? Like Thursday nights could be Mexican night, right? The guy that plays on Saturday that's bachata night may not know what to play on the Thursday night, right? And that's normal. But if you're a guy that you're gonna play reggaeton, have more or knowledge of the music that's playing right now. Throw some classics, Tego Calderon, some Don Omar from, you know, people still rock to those records more sometimes than even some of the new ones because they've heard them a lot of times. They know the music.
Nah, yeah, you're right, you're right. Remember, people, y'all heard it first from a legend himself, DJ Casanova. Take notes at home. Have your pen and paper out. Don't just be listening and don't be taking notes. Ya casi estamos en la recta final. You know, I'm very thankful. We all are very thankful and blessed for inviting us to your house, you know, to your studio, which I say one more time is very nice. It's very unique.
A lot of sacrifice.
Lo tienes bien
and by the way,
organizado.
One thing that I would like to add, you mentioned the studio. This doesn't happen overnight, right? People want to start DJing and they think that by next week they're going to be big and they're going to have all the equipment. No. It takes time, but if you keep your eye on the goal, if you identify the goal, the first thing you have to do is, what DJ do you want to be, right? Do you want to be the next David Guetta? Do you want to be the next Adoni? Do you want to be the next Casanova? What is it that you want to be? And then keep your eye on the goal. You'll start accumulating equipment. You'll start accumulating knowledge, but you have to spend every day. If you have a goal, one of the things that I've learned that I could pass on as information to you guys is that if you set a goal, every day you do 5 things towards the achievement of that goal, right? And this is super important. Don't skip a day. Oh, it's Sunday, so I'm not going to do this. No, if you really have a goal and you're serious about it, every day you have to do 5 things. So let's say you want to get, your goal is to play in all the big clubs in New York. Every day you should be hitting up those promoters, those club owners, doing things to get their attention, posting content online saying what you could do, right? Those are all small things that are going to contribute towards your goal. But you can't just say, I'm a DJ, here I am, here's my business card, and expect people to know who you are. You have to put in that work. And then the other thing I would tell DJs that a lot of them earlier on make is that they think that it's a zero-sum game. And that what that means is that in order for one to win, the other has to lose. And I'm here to tell you that it's not a zero-sum game. Both of us could be successful. There's abundance. You know, David Guetta is getting a ton of money, but so is Tiesto, and so is Calvin Harris. These guys, they don't care, because while Tiesto's in Dubai, this guy could be in Vegas. But I see a lot, especially a lot of Latino DJs, they're like, such and such, he's whack. I don't know why they're booking him. And it's like, that's the wrong thing to do. You should be asking is like, what is he doing that he's getting all those bookings, right? Because I want those bookings too. Instead of taking him down or taking him apart, ask the question, what is it that he's doing that he's getting all these bookings? And once you start asking the right questions, you'll be like, oh, I see that he's on social media every day, or I see that he's live streaming on YouTube, or I see that he's, you know, now you say, okay, let me apply this to what I'm trying to do. But when you start being negative or when you start hating on success, I'm here to tell you that you're pushing success away. When you embrace success, when you say, damn, if this guy as a DJ got a brand new Lambo, I could do this too. You know, because all humans, we share the same things, right? But one thing that people don't talk about, and is the you know, some people think, oh, but he's more talented than me. Yeah, there's talent, but there's also repetition and skill. If every day you do something, your skill's gonna get better. But if you do it every now and then, or if you're not into it, or if you're just doing it for the money, go do Uber driving instead of, because, you know, like if you want to make it big in this business, you got to put in work and you got to do more than what regular DJs are doing if you want the recognition and the money. You can't just put 2 records on beat and pretend that now you want $1,000, right? You got to do more than that. You got to bring value to the place that's hiring you. And in my case, obviously, I have a name that I built over the years. But if you're new, it could be something as simple as you being on social media promoting the event. promoters like this, club owners like this, that the DJ is actually pushing people towards the venue, and it's like, you know, he's a good DJ and he promotes, you know, the night. Those are qualities that you want to have as a DJ.
You already heard it. Everybody that's on Instagram, TikTok, basically what he tried to say, putting it in small words, is la hermandad, que todo mundo se junte, that's what makes us together, not everybody fighting. I get what you're saying, trust me, because I see that every day. I know what you mean and where you're going with what you're saying. You're right. A lot of people, instead of trying to lend you a hand, they'll rather just kick you to the cliff because it's more better. But I guess it's because, you know, Latinos are different. You know, we don't want to share the pie. We want to take the whole pie.
Well, I think a lot of that, I mean, we could get really deep with this, but a lot of that comes from your upbringing, right? When you grew up poor, and I grew up poor, you're told that there's no abundance, right? Like, you know, like, mama, yo quiero estos Jordans. No hay dinero para Jordans, right? Like, it's not you're not getting that. And so we grow up with this thing where there's no money, like, and then you see somebody else with Jordans and you're like, I wonder what they're doing that they have those Jordans, like, and then you see it as like it's impossible for you. And I'm here to tell you that get away from that mindset that your parents and your family put in you, because there's some Latino families that think rich people are evil and mean. Yes. Like, yeah, esos ricos son unos desgraciados todos, you know, porque tienen dinero. And it's like, and that's not the right mindset, because you're never going to attract, you're never going to be rich, because you're going to self-sabotage. Like, I tell you from personal experience that sometimes we get pushed up, like we're doing all this, but then we get to a point where it's like, that's not me. I'm not supposed to have all this money, so I'm gonna go blow it. You know, like and it's because of that mindset that we have left there from years of, you know, and you got to break out of that poor mentality and that cycle. And I tell people all the time, like, it takes the same amount of effort to pay for a Porsche than it does for a Honda Civic. It's like, where are your priorities? How hard are you willing to work for that Porsche? If you don't want to work hard, you want to be mediocre, you're going to get mediocre stuff and mediocre money. If you're willing to put in the work, take risk, and go hard, you're going to be able to have the toys, right? You're going to be able to live a lifestyle that you want.
He's right, he's right.
And it takes the same exact amount of effort, you know, like to do those things.
I mean, yeah, you work pretty hard. Look, we was outside waiting for you parking. When you pulled up with your car, we were like, that's a hard-working man right there. That's a hard-working man right there.
Put in work.
There's pain, man. It's all about pain. And, you know, like I said one more time, you know, thank you very much for having us. You know, we appreciate the love. You know, thanks for giving us time, because more than nothing is your time. Time is valuable. You know, time is worth more than money sometimes. And you could be doing other stuff with your time, but you're here with us, and we really appreciate that. You know, that you spread the knowledge to people, that you tell them what they want to hear, whether they take it or not. But you know, you threw it out there.
Sometimes they're not ready for this, but they'll come back and eventually be like, oh, you know, because I remember my mom giving me advice, and I would brush it off like, what does my mom know, right? And then you get older and you're like, oh, she was right.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like one of the things that my mom used to say a lot, and it's like, you think you're special, right? And she would say, la mujer que es fácil contigo es fácil con todo el mundo. And you're like, she don't know what she's talking about. I'm the Mac daddy, right? You know, like I get away with that. But it's like, no, it's like if it's a girl that's like out there and you think you're not. And so sometimes you have to kind of like treat things like that too. Like, you know, like listen to your parents and people that have experience, because they went through it. They know how life works, you know, essentially. I wouldn't have had the same conversation with you even 10 years ago.
Exactly.
But as you get older, you start to mature and you start to hit plateaus, you start to hit roadblocks. Because in the entertainment industry, people think that there's a time limit, right? That past a certain age, and you hear actors talking about this, oh, she's not getting any roles because she's already 35. And it's like, if you want to put that in your head, that that's it, it's done for me because I'm 35, I'm here to tell you that there's a guy, he plays house music, his name is Carl Cox. I think he's like entering his 60s. Okay. And this guy's packing out freaking like festivals, not just arenas, but festivals. 40,000 people are there to see Carl Cox perform his house music. And he's already, I think, nearing 60 years old. So it's, you put that limit in your head. You tell yourself, and you also have to know that, okay, maybe you're not going to appeal to an 18-year-old, but you still have a public that's could be 30 plus, 40 plus, whatever it is.
Yes.
And so you can't, like, and so an older DJ might be watching this and be like, oh, but all the young kids are taking the gigs. You also, one of the things that I also learned that it's good to share with people is that you have to create your own opportunities, right? Sometimes they don't want to book you. Okay, maybe you don't fit in that night. But what if you go with the concept to a club and say, hey, I want to do an oldies night. I want to do a throwback Thursday. Every Thursday, we're going to have music that we're going to play from the 80s and 90s. And all of a sudden now you got that crowd that don't want to party with the young kids because they don't know the music, but they know the 80s and 90s. And now you got a packed house and everybody's like, yo, this dope party, because you found your community, you found your night, and you created it. You can't wait sometimes for other people to create stuff for you, because a lot of times it's easier to go with the lowest hanging fruit, meaning what DJ is hot right now? Okay, let's book him, right? You have to create these opportunities, and you have to do more than what you traditionally thought you had to do, right? Before I just show up to the club, plug in my laptop, and that's it. They pay me. When you get older, you realize that, wait a minute, I have to come up with concept. I have to reinvent myself. I have to talk differently to these people and diversify yourself, because obviously you can't compete with an 18-year-old. And I'm not saying that that's practical, but if you stay in the circuit and you stay doing it and you move, then you get the respect of these 18-year-olds. And you see this with guys like Vicente Fernandez. Vicente Fernandez was like, 70 years old, still selling out stadiums with his son. And there was a bunch of young people there. Yeah. And that's Vicente, like respect for him, because he stood in his field. If Vicente Fernandez, when he turned 40, would have said, that's it, after 40, nobody's going to want to hire me, then that's what would have happened, right?
You're right. Nah, man. There was a lot of knowledge being spread in this room. Like, you fill me with a lot of knowledge, man. And that's dope, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there also, they like to relate to different stories. And your story is unique because, I was there when you was like at the bottom, and then you started rising and rising. And I saw, like, how you became a DJ, so then you became a producer, so you became in the radio, so then you started, doing commercial, and I saw everything, and that's dope, bro. Like, that's respect from one human being to another, man. You did your thing, much respect, you did what you had to do, and you keep doing it, and I hope that, from here on, you keep doing nothing but blessings for you, my brother. And, appreciate the time for coming into the Plebada podcast, giving us a little bit of your knowledge and your time. And we just hope you had a good time today with us, man.
I appreciate you guys coming into the studio. I wanted to one of the things that I said that I wanted to do in 2026 was share my knowledge and educate a lot of the younger DJs coming up. And one thing before we leave that I'll leave to you guys is leave your ego at the door. And I'll explain what that means, because sometimes you hear that, oh, leave your ego at the door. They don't even know what that means. And essentially what that means is, when you show up somewhere, right? Let's say that you're the hottest DJ right now. You're killing it. Everybody's booking you. You go to a club and they tell you, here the people don't like the cumbia sonidera. And you're like, what the fuck do they know? I'm going to play cumbia sonidera. And you play cumbia sonidera and like nobody's responding to you. And then you're like, oh, this place is whack. No, it's not the place. It's like your ego. You thought that you were bigger than the place. You thought that you were bigger than the instructions that you got. And as a DJ early on, I would do that, right? Like, I'm like, don't play hip hop. And I would play hip hop. And I'm like, you see, but they're rocking to the hip hop. Like, I know better than you. Then they stop booking you. And you're like, oh, why are they not booking me? Because you play hip hop. They don't want hip hop because they have a hip hop on Saturday. Or they want to keep it a certain format. And here you are thinking that you're better and know it better than they do. And that's the ego. Ego will also prevent you from learning from other people because you think, oh, I already know everything. I don't need to learn nothing. You know, look at me. I got 3 parties every weekend. Like, I don't need to learn from anybody. And the trends change, or you run into what we call muletilla or crutch, where you play the same set every week, and you hear the people in the club, such and such, he plays the same shit every week. You may be playing hits, but if people already learned a pattern, they know that after this song you're gonna play that one, you stop being special. And that is ego saying, like, I don't need to practice, I don't need to change my set because, you know, it's working. And so ego is a major downfall. A lot of times too, like, DJs will be like, oh, if they give me that club, I'll turn it around. I bet you I could go in there and kill it. And it's like, okay, what if that club had a shooting there and somebody got killed? Nobody wants to go there anymore. Or you park your car outside and they stole all your tires and that shit spread out and nobody wants to go. You could be the dopest DJ and nobody will still go. And so that's ego telling you, like, you're bigger than what you really are. And it's all in your head, is what you tell yourself. And so the people that are highly successful are the people that continue to grow, continue to learn. And you see this with millionaires, right? This guy has so much money. Why is he investing in that business? If I was him, I'd be in the beach right now sipping on a piña colada. And it's because you don't have the same mindset. If you want to grow, if you want to attract wealth, you have to start thinking like wealthy people and stop thinking like poor people that don't want to work, that don't want to do anything.
Yeah, he's right. He's right. Man, you left me speechless there for a bit. I was like, you have me in the zone there. Nah, but thank you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your wisdom words. You know, appreciate everything. Hope we can do this one more time later on. You know, maybe next year, come back again. And, you know, I appreciate everything. And shout out to La PLEBADA NYC. Follow DJ Casanova on Instagram, Facebook, you know, TikTok. Follow him everywhere. Trust me, one of the dopest, realest, humblest man you will ever find, I want to say, in the planet.
Thank you,
like,
brother.
You know, he's
Appreciate
always been doing his thing. Like.